There will be a moment, and it usually comes quieter than either of you expects, when a narcissist looks at you mid-sentence, mid-lie, mid-performance, and realizes with a jolt they can't hide fast enough that it's not landing. Not this time. Not anymore. You're not confused. You're not scrambling to make sense of the contradiction. You're just watching them, calm, clear, completely unmoved by whatever version of the story they were about to sell you. And in that exact second, something happens behind their eyes that most people never get to witness, because most people either never get far enough to see it, or they see it and don't understand what they're actually looking at. Today, we're going to name it precisely, because that moment, the moment a narcissist realizes they can no longer fool you, is one of the most quietly devastating things that can happen to them, and understanding why is going to change how you see every future interaction with someone like this. Here's what almost nobody explains clearly about this exact moment, and it matters enormously because it reframes something that so many people misread completely. When a narcissist can no longer deceive you, this isn't a small tactical setback for them, a minor inconvenience they'll shrug off and adjust around. It's closer to a genuine identity crisis, because deception, subtle or overt, has functioned as one of the primary tools holding their entire sense of control together. Being seen clearly, fully, without the fog they've relied on to manage your perception, isn't just uncomfortable for them, it's existentially threatening in a way that goes far beyond simple embarrassment or frustration. So let's break down exactly what happens in this moment, step by step. Because the devastation doesn't show up all at once, and it doesn't always look the way you'd expect. The first thing that happens is disbelief, and I mean genuine, disorienting disbelief, because for most narcissists, deception has worked so reliably, for so long, on so many people, that the idea of it simply failing doesn't register immediately as a real possibility. Their first instinct isn't to accept what's happening. It's to assume some kind of malfunction, a fluke, a bad day on your part, rather than a permanent shift. This is why you'll often see them repeat the same tactic almost immediately after it fails. The same excuse rephrased slightly differently. The same manipulation attempted from a marginally different angle. Because on some level they're testing whether what just happened was real or whether it was a temporary glitch in a system that's worked flawlessly for years. The second thing that happens, once the disbelief starts to wear thin, is a scramble for recalibration. And this is where things start to get genuinely revealing, because you'll notice a kind of frantic energy underneath their attempts, even if it's dressed up as calm or confidence on the surface. They'll try a different angle entirely. Maybe the straightforward lie gets replaced with something more emotional, an appeal to guilt, an appeal to history, an appeal to how much they supposedly care. Maybe the confident deflection gets replaced with sudden, unexpected vulnerability, because if straightforward manipulation isn't working, perhaps a softer approach will finally get through. This scramble isn't really about you specifically anymore. It's about them desperately trying to find the angle that still works, because the alternative, accepting that none of their tools work on you now, is not something their system is prepared to sit with easily. The third thing that happens, and this is where the real devastation starts to show, even if it's buried under bravado or dismissiveness, is a kind of quiet panic that starts leaking through the cracks. You might notice their voice shift slightly, a little less steady than usual. You might notice a pause that wasn't there before, a half second of genuine hesitation before their next line. You might notice them repeating themselves, circling back to points they've already made, almost as if trying to convince themselves as much as you. This is the moment their internal system starts registering something it has never had to fully process before, the loss of a tool they didn't realize how completely they depended on until it stopped working. And this is exactly where we need to go deeper, because understanding what's actually happening underneath that panic, why losing the ability to deceive you specifically hits so much harder than losing it with anyone else, reveals something important about what you represented to them and why this moment marks something much bigger than a single failed manipulation attempt. That's exactly where we're going next. That deeper layer, The reason losing the ability to deceive you specifically hits so much harder than losing it with anyone else comes down to something we've touched on before, but that deserves full attention here because it explains the exact shape of that devastation once it fully sets in. For a narcissist, deception has never really been about the individual lie itself. It's been about maintaining a story, a narrative about who they are, who you are to them, and what the relationship actually is, that lets them stay in control of the emotional reality between you. Every successful manipulation, every believed excuse, every accepted deflection functions as proof that they still hold the pen on that story, that their version of events still wins over your own direct experience. When that stops working, when you can see straight through the performance without flinching, without questioning yourself, without needing them to confirm what you already know to be true, something far more significant than a single failed lie collapses. The pen leaves their hand. And for someone whose entire sense of control has depended on being the one writing the story, that loss doesn't feel like a minor setback. It feels like the ground disappearing. This is why the devastation, once it fully lands, tends to look different from ordinary disappointment or frustration. You'll often see a strange kind of grief underneath their reactions, not grief over losing you exactly, but grief over losing a version of themselves that depended on you not seeing clearly. Some narcissists respond to this by escalating, trying harder, louder, more desperately to reclaim the narrative, because giving up on it entirely feels unbearable. Others respond by withdrawing almost completely, disappearing from the dynamic in a way that looks like indifference, but is actually closer to retreat, an inability to stay in a relationship where the story no longer belongs to them. And some do something that surprises people most, a kind of hollow, unsettling stillness, where the usual bravado simply doesn't show up anymore. Because for possibly the first time, there's genuinely nothing left in the toolbox that hasn't already failed. I want to address something important here, because this moment, watching a narcissist realize they can't fool you anymore, can bring up a strange mix of emotions that are worth naming honestly. There's often a real sense of power in it, of validating, hard-earned clarity after however long you spent doubting your own perception, wondering if you were the problem, wondering if you were simply too sensitive or too suspicious. Watching that fog finally lift, watching them realize it lifted too, can feel like genuine vindication. But there's also, for a lot of people, an unexpected undertow of sadness that shows up alongside that vindication, a mourning for the relationship you once believed you had, or the person you once believed they might become, even as you're finally seeing with complete clarity that neither of those things was ever quite real in the way you needed them to be. Both of these feelings, the vindication and the grief, can exist together, and neither one cancels out the validity of the other. Now, I want to talk about something practically important here, because recognizing this moment when it happens matters for how you protect yourself going forward. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer deceive you, this rarely marks the end of their attempts. It marks a shift in strategy. Because remember, the goal was never really the individual lie. It was control over the narrative. And if deception has stopped working as the tool to maintain that control, a narcissist will often pivot toward other tools instead, tools that don't require you to believe a false story, but instead try to make you doubt whether your clarity matters at all. This might look like an attempt to punish you for seeing through them, subtle coldness, sudden distance, behavior clearly designed to make you feel like your newfound clarity cost you something. It might look like an attempt to make the relationship or the interaction simply not worth the effort of continuing, hoping that withdrawing entirely will make you chase the reconnection the way you might have in the past. Understanding that the goal has shifted from deceiving you to punishing or discouraging your clarity is essential for holding your ground through whatever comes next. I also want to address something that a lot of people don't expect to feel in this exact moment, a flicker of something close to pity, because underneath the panic, underneath the scramble, underneath whatever version of devastation you're witnessing, There's a person whose entire sense of control has just been shown to be far more fragile than they ever let anyone see. It's completely natural, especially for people with deep empathy, to feel a pull toward softening in this moment, toward reassuring them, toward making the discomfort of watching someone unravel a little easier to bear. I want to be honest with you about this because it matters for protecting the clarity you've worked so hard to reach. Feeling compassion for the fragility underneath their behavior does not obligate you to rescue them from the consequences of that fragility. You are allowed to see their devastation clearly, understand where it comes from, and still hold the boundary that got you to this moment in the first place. Compassion and accountability are not mutually exclusive, and softening now, out of pity, risks handing back exactly the thing you finally hard-earned took away. So what does this moment actually mean for you? Once you've witnessed it, once you understand what's genuinely happening underneath their reaction, I think it means something quite powerful, something worth sitting with fully. This moment is proof, undeniable, direct proof, that your clarity is real, that your perception was never the problem, that the fog you spent so long doubting yourself through was never actually coming from your own mind, but from a deliberate, sustained effort to keep you from seeing exactly what you're seeing right now. You didn't imagine any of it. You didn't overreact. You didn't misunderstand something that was actually innocent all along. The devastation you're watching is confirmation, the clearest confirmation you'll ever get, that everything you sensed, everything you questioned yourself over, everything you were told you were wrong about was real, and that your ability to finally see through it isn't a small thing. It's the exact thing they were counting on you never developing. If this named something you've witnessed and finally understood the weight of, know that you're far from the only one who's watched this exact moment unfold, and there's a lot more we can work through together as we go. Make sure you're subscribed because we go deeper into this every single week.